Hey guys, how you doing? It's Khazir here. Now in this tutorial, I am going to be taking a look at the new Reflectance channel inside Cinema 4D R16. So this is going to be a sort of an important tutorial. I have been working with Reflectance channel for 6-7 hours really, not too much. And my first evaluation, first of all, I can give you a precise evaluation, and I believe this evaluation could be given when you really use this in a real world project to see how it really can be used. But what I have seen in this channel, that it is a very powerful, complex, unintuitive uh, system of creating materials. It is powerful, definitely. It's complex, it's powerful. You can create a lot of nice material, but it's a bit unintuitive. They could have worked more on really how to use it and how to layer stuff. Sometimes you just it doesn't feel right. I don't know whether we think so because we, for example, we have used V-Ray layer-based system, and it kind of works a bit differently from what this system works, and both are layer-based. But anywho, I think it's a good system. So let's take a look. I'm gonna give you a basic, maybe more actually in-depth introduction to the Reflectance channel and different stuff that you have inside this Reflectance channel. Okay guys, so let's go ahead and see what we have here. As soon as you open a material, the preview hasn't changed much from the previous version. So you have the color with this sort of off-white color, and a reflectance channel with this default specular layer, which is basically tries to mimic the specular channel inside previous versions of Cinema 4D. And yeah, so the first thing you basically do, you go ahead and you select this layer, come here and remove it. So this is basically what you do, because there is a huge possibility that you don't need specular, because we are moving toward more realistic and physically accurate sort of material system. So this way you have to get rid of specular, which is a fake reflection. Sometimes you really, especially for motion graphic designers, we are using a lot of fake stuff and definitely fake reflections. But today we're going to be seeing the Reflectance channel inside out, hopefully, and see how it works. So this is the Reflectance channel. Now the Reflectance channel is an entire material system by itself. It simply means you can create a complex material without touching any of these other channels. You don't need bump, you don't need alpha, you don't need normal. All of them can be created inside this system, even though there are sort of some limitations that you have to take into consideration. Now I will talk about a few stuff. Now let's go ahead and get started with this thing. So this is the first thing that you can see after you have removed the specular channel, specular layer there. You have this layer, you have a few buttons, and you got global reflection brightness and global specular brightness, and these separate passes. Now when you add a few layers, these two parameters here, this global reflection and global specular, they're controlling your reflectance, reflection, and your specular globally. What does that mean? It simply means that you can control the strength of those layers simply by this slider here. If you wanna all of your layers to become 0, you can make it 0, and vice versa. And for specular, also on this separate pass, you can basically, if you enable it and then using your multipass, you can have your layer, your different reflection layers to be separated in your multipass rendering, so you can combine them in your favorite compositing app. Okay, so there we go. Now let's get started. When you click on add, you get this basically menu here. You got the Beckman GGX, Fong, Ward, anisotropic, Lambert and diffuse, Oranair, Irvan, reflection, legacy, specular Boolean legacy, and specular Fong legacy. So these three items down here basically are dedicated for legacy purposes, as the name suggests here. if you have an older scene and you want to open it with Cinema 4D R16, these guys are trying to basically give you the same results as the old reflection channel and specular channel. So what does that mean for you? Basically try to not use them. If you really are looking for more physically accurate results, try to stay with these guys up there. So now up there you have 4 different basically reflection methods. You got the Beckman, GGX, Fung, and Ward. Now the Beckman is the most physically accurate one. The GGX is more suited to metals. The Fung and the Ward are more suited to soft surfaces like I don't know, rubber, skin, or stuff like that. You got the anisotropic here, which is dedicated to basically creating sort of brushed metal sort of surfaces with scratches and stuff like that, which is really great in this. And this is the anisotropic. You got the Lambertian and ordinaire. This 2-1 is basically to you know, it's like having the color channel inside your reflection channel. You can have this 2-1. Now this might get a bit technical, but I'm trying to just give you I'm really trying to make everything as simple as possible. Now these 2-1 are, as I said, are like having the color channel inside your reflection channel, and basically you can't turn off your color and use this 2-1 instead of the color channel, and they are gonna do something similar but not quite exact. There are a few differences that I will mention hopefully. Now this Erevan woven clothes, this is specific for recreating fabric surfaces, which is a very, very powerful and unique thing, but I'm not sure how much it's going to be useful, but it is a really, really cool addition to new Cinema 4D R16 and these 3 stuff that I actually mentioned. Now let's go ahead, and instead of going to the reflections, I'm going to start by this Lambertian and ordinaire. So if I go ahead, I don't know how much you remember the previous C40 version when we used to go to illumination, and in here we had an option to change the illumination model or something like that, and there you had to one of the options as you remember was this ordinaire here that was for creating more of rough surfaces, and Lambertian is more for soft surfaces, sort of. For example, if you want to create a rock, you will go to this ordinaire here. And if you do go to your color channel, you can see you have the ability to actually control the model here, Lambertian and ordinaire. Both of them can be controlled in the color channel, and also you can add them separately here in the reflectance, a new name, man. Channel here. Now what is the difference between adding the color from here or basically coming here and adding it in here? Now the difference is basically when you add your color or your illumination model here, these 2 models are not gonna be participate in global illumination. Now this is a really rough description, but I think for most users this is the best description. So basically if you are gonna have global illumination, these 2-1 are not gonna, if you add them here, are not gonna take part in those. They are kind of have a sort of internal global illumination. They are basically trying to reflect the environment, but they are not going to be used in your irradiance cache while you actually using a GI or global illumination in your renders. But if you add them here in your color channel, okay, so if I get back to layer and select the layer and remove it, if you get back and add the colors here and change the model to whatever you want, they're going to be actually used in the global illumination calculation. So the first recommendation is if you are a GI sort of user and use it a lot, which for me, I actually don't remember a render. I haven't used GI in my final renders. So go ahead and stick with your color channel and don't use this Lambertian and diffuse. So this is not only my recommendation, actually Maxon actually recommend that you use your color channel and not stick to this Lambertian and ordinary. Okay guys, now let's go ahead and continue. So I think this is enough about this one, but let me just for tutorial purposes, let me actually add this Lambertian diffuse. Now I'm not going to talk about actually everything here because basically this is a really simple diffuse. As you can see, the reflection strength is 100%. You have no roughness and a layer color, and that's it. Okay, so very simple. So this is the Lambertian and ordinary, something quite similar, a bit more rougher. I am not gonna actually use this, guys. I'm just going to remove this thing, okay, and go ahead and actually just have a simple color. I'm gonna use this sorta. Okay, this is good. I'm gonna change the model to Lambertian. Go ahead to Reflectance channel, and let's go ahead and talk about the Beckman. Now, Beckman and GGX, I actually told you what is the difference, but really they are not that different, so you don't have to really think about it. Hey, am I gonna use Beckman? Am I gonna use GGX? Not matter. Really, don't think about it. It doesn't matter. More physically accurate, go with Beckman. More metallic look, go with GGX. And I'm sure they're not gonna look that much of a difference. So I'm gonna use Beckman in this example, and let's go ahead and talk about different parameters that we have inside your Reflectance channel. Now, the first thing that you can see is the type. Basically, you can change the type to those options that you had when you clicked on Add. So, not sorta important. And you got the attenuation. Now, what is the attenuation, guys? The attenuation is basically controls how the color in your layer color down here, this white color, is gonna be mixed with the color that you specify inside your main color channel in your Cinema 4D material. So you have a few options here. You got average, maximum, additive, metal. Metal is again for legacy purposes, for kind of recreating the sort of specular, and I think this one is specific for specular. For as I said, recreating the specular that we used to recreate and create inside previous version of Cinema 4D, so it doesn't matter that much. And these three options, average, maximum, and additive. Now the average, basically, as the name suggests, tries to average out the color here and the color in your color channel. Okay, so for example, let me show you something. If I go ahead, hopefully make this color blue, as you can see now, you have the mix between this green color and this blue color, and you can really obviously see it in your preview there. And if you change the attenuation to maximum, now this is quite similar with average, with one difference, and it is that maximum tries, or basically it mixes between these two colors here and here, but the difference is the color inside your reflection channel will be more dominant than the color here. So there is a bit of blue there, but really not as dominant as here. And additive, you are gonna get the this color being added to this color, and the result is there. And now it really depends. So I don't know how you are gonna use it, and it depends on your situation. Sometimes maybe you have to use this maximum or whatever. And I can recommend, for example, use this one or use that one. This absolutely depends on where you are and what you are trying to achieve. Okay, so let me just get back. And so this is the attenuation. I don't think it's really that important, but it could be useful. Okay, let me just create, while I'm explaining this options there, so we have a preview. I am thinking this tutorial might actually go quite crazy time-wise, so let's see. Now the next thing is the roughness. Is the exact same option as the blurriness in the previous versions of Cinema 4D. So the more you add the option, you are gonna get a more blurrier result. Okay, so 100% you are gonna get an absolutely matte reflection. and 0 you are going to get no blurriness or no roughness or no glossiness as we know it from traditional material systems. Anyways, so let's go to something like 40. Okay, now let's you have this here, open it, so you get a texture slot there. Let me go ahead and use a simple texture slot that I always use to explain this sort of stuff, and this is checkerboard because I think it's quite obvious. Now you get this option, and I think it's quite great that they finally give you this option to have your roughness being controlled by a texture or blurriness. As you know, the blurriness inside previous Cinema 4D versions, actually we didn't have this option. We just get a value to go ahead and add more blurriness, but in this version you actually have the ability to use a texture to define where you want your object to be blurry and where you want to have a sharp reflection. So what this option does basically, the white pixel are going to using 100% of this value, which is 40% right now, and the black pixel are going to be using 0% of this value, which is always 0. Now you are not stick to just black and white. Basically the grayscale values could be used. I mean, for example, if I change this black to something like a gray value, you can simply see you are gonna get an in-between blurriness, while the pixels where the pixels are white, you get this very blurry reflections, and where the pixels are gray, you are going to get this not that blurry. So this is this texture slot here, and there is a, as you can see, texture slot for the specular strengths and for the reflection strengths, and they are exactly doing the same thing, so I'm not gonna waste your time explaining those two. So basically this is the blurriness. Okay, and you got the reflection strength, which is basically controls how much reflection you're gonna have. If you go to 0, no reflection. If you go to 100%, 100% reflection. Okay, so this is also important. Let's see. Now you got the specular strength, basically is the specular amount. If I go ahead and have a lot of roughness, let's see, you can see the change of specular when the roughness isn't that much. Let's see, you can kind of hard to see actually the effect of specular strength in this preview, but when you render it, is basically controls the amount of specular or highlight that you have on your object. So it's, I think, quite simple stuff for any C4D user, so I'm not gonna go talk about all of this stuff. Now you got this bump string, which is a very great addition and really allows you to create any sort of stuff. Here you can have basically use different bump maps for different layers that you're going to be creating here. For example, if I go ahead and add a custom bump map, you can use bump or normal. So you're not bump are just the grayscale values, and normal maps are sort of more special maps. So I'm going to use a map here, a bump map here, and when you change your bump to custom bump map, now you can define your texture. So let's go ahead and use a noise there. There we go. And right now, maybe you are confused what this texture slot up there does when you have this texture down here. Basically, I think this is one of the parts that gets a bit unintuitive, but if you go ahead and define the texture, again, I'm going to use this checkerboard. So where there is a white, you are going to get basically 100% of this bump map, and when there is black, you are going to get nothing of this bump map. So this is basically what it does. So if there is a question about that, and that is, and you got the you can control the effect of your bump map very simply up down here, and you got this MIP falloff. Basically what this doing is as the surface moves away from the camera, when this thing is checked, it tries to reduce the amount of bumps so the render goes a bit faster. Okay, so that's about this one. Let's go ahead and continue here. Okay, now the next thing is the layer color here. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and clear this bump map here. Sorry. There we go. Okay, now here you got the layer color. Basically you can here define now based on what you are, where you are at. If you are using, for example, a Lambertian or ordinary diffuse, this layer color will be basically defining the color of your material. Here, because we are in a reflection layer, it defines the reflection color. So if I, for example, go to another color like this, you can see how it actually works there. So very simple, and I think you're used with this color channel in Cinema 4D previous version. We had something quite similar. As you can see, you've got a brightness, you can define a texture to control the color, and you have this mix amount if you define a texture to control the mix amount between the color and the texture that you define. So I'm not gonna talk about what is very conventional inside Cinema 4D. Now you got the layer mask. Okay, let me just drink something here. Great. Now the layer mask is a very, very important part that is great, really. Now the layer mask is exactly as alpha channel. Now imagine you have alpha channel for each and every one of your layers, so you can control their transparency based on layer, not based on a whole material, even though you can still control that here, but you have the ability to use layer mask to actually control the where your material will be seen. Let me just go ahead and add a layer here, for example this diffuse. Let me go ahead and change the color. So I'm gonna explain the layer mask in here. Now as you can see, as soon as we added the second layer, which is this Lambertian, and we added change the color, now we can't see this layer below it, which is this reflection. Now in order to see this, one of the ways is using this layer mask. So for example, if I go ahead, you got this amount, which is basically a very global control here for this layer mask. As you can see, the color is white, so we have just this layer and we can't see anything below it. Now if you want to see the layers below it, what you can do is to define a grayscale texture. So again, I'm going to use my checkerboard here. So as you can see, where is white, you see this layer. Where is black, you see the layer below it, which is this reflection here. So this basically, this is the layer mask. Okay, I think it's quite obvious now. After that, you got this layer Fresnel. Now the layer Fresnel, let me actually go ahead and actually before layer Fresnel, let's go ahead and talk about this part here. You can see up here you have the layers that you have created, the first layer and the second layer. You can double click on them and change their name. You can click on this button here and turn the layers on and off. You can select the layer and change their blending mode. Basically it's normal for reflection and diffuse, but possibly it would be better to use add when you have a layer dedicated to specular. So that's about it. And you can control the basically the strength of this layer. As you can see, when we go to 0, you can't see that layer at all. And you can select a layer, you can remove that layer, you can copy this layer, and you can paste that layer. Now we have 2 layers of that, and you can select a layer and simply remove it. So this is about it. And now let's go ahead and talk about the layer Fresnel. Okay, now the layer Fresnel is basically another way to control the transparency or the alpha channel of your layer. Now the layer Fresnel, as you know, and I know anyone who has used Cinema 4D definitely knows about the about the Fresnel here, which we used to actually use it a lot to create sort of shiny spheres, and basically what the Fresnel is, when you for example when you look at a water pool, when you look at it sideways, you see a lot of reflections, but when you look at it from above, you can see what's inside the water. So this is what we call it reflection. When a surface looks at the camera, or better to say the camera looks at a surface, you can see less reflections, okay, when it's directly looks at the camera, and more reflection when the surface moves away from the camera. So basically the Fresnel we could use to create this Fresnel channel, we used to use this to recreate that effect. Now we can use this layer Fresnel, which is very specific to recreating the same effect. Okay, so if you go to layer Fresnel, you got two types, dielectric and conductor. Now dielectric is for transparent surfaces like glass, water, or stuff like that, and conductor for more metallic look. So this is very important actually to kind of know. And when you use any one of these two, for example, if I go to conductor, Cinema 4D gives you a lot of presets. You can see you get different stuff. You got aluminium, you got copper, you got gold, you got iron, and when you change it to dielectric, you can get some presets that are related to more transparent, like water and glass stuff, okay, diamond, pure asphalt, or stuff like that. Okay, so this is the difference here. Now in this case, let's go ahead and go to the conductor, and look at this. As soon as you change this to conductor, if you can see, go to none, we can't see anything of our color here, but as soon as I change this to conductor, you can see now we have less reflections in this center part and more reflections in these edges. And to be honest, just if I click on this invert here, you can see it's hopefully in a bit better way. Basically, okay, I'm gonna explain that later on. You have different presets that you can use, and I suggest if you are trying to recreate something, it's a really good idea to use these presets, okay, for example iron. And when you use these presets, you are not going to be able to adjust IOR, index of refraction, or absorption here, but if you use a custom method or custom preset, you're going to be able to freely adjust this value and make the material as you wish. So we got the IOR, and the nice thing is you can define texture for IR, which is actually great, and you got the ability to define a texture for your absorption. Now basically, if you go ahead and change it to custom, this is the overall strength of your falloff. If you go to 0, you basically have no Fresnel, and if you go to 100%, you got 100% of your Fresnel. Now this IOR value is it's basically a specific, there is a specific IOR or index of refraction for any surfaces. So when you, for example, define if I change this thing to gold, so the IR of gold is 1.35. If it's changing it here, no, it actually won't give us the value here. But any parameter, any surface, any basically material has its own unique index of refraction, and if you are looking for creating something very specific, go ahead and Google its IR and type the number here. Okay, now for example, let's go to something like 1.5. This absorption, so as you can see how it affects your Fresnel here. If it's 0, there is no Fresnel, and as you add, you are going to get a bit more Fresnel effect there. The absorption is something quite similar. As you can see, 0, we get this, 100%, we get this, and if you go ahead and change this value, you're going to get a better idea of what exactly absorption does to your material. Okay, now let's go ahead to a default value here, and you got this invert value, which basically tries to invert the whole effect. As you can see now, the central parts are getting more reflective and the edges are less reflective. And this opaque, basically it's a layer based system, and the layers are basically trying to interact as the Americans say, with each other. So if you turn this opaque value, it will try to keep this layer from bleeding through the other layers. So I know it's a bit more complex and you really have to go through and experience it, but this is what this opaque value does. Okay, now you got this layer sampling, which is a bit more advanced options, and I'm just gonna really talk about this first one, which is sampling subdivision, and basically it controls the quality of your material. Just note that this layer sampling If you use a standard renderer, you can freely change it, and this way you have, for example, a better blurriness or a better reflection, less noise in your blurry reflections. But if you go ahead and actually enable the physical renderer, you're gonna get, you can see the sampling subdivision is basically turned off, and you have to go ahead and control your sampling down here using these values: blurriness subdivision, shadow subdivisions. For example, blurriness subdivisions, go here, and for more general quality stuff you can go and add your samples here. Okay, let's see what we got here. I know it's quite rough explanations, but we're going to get to actually creating some materials using this system, but I just want to give you an explanation basically of what these guys are doing. Now, basically, Beckman, GGX, Fung, and Ward are quite similar in their options, and there is not much of a change. Now, I'm going to go and talk about the anisotropic and see what these guys basically are going to do for us. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and change, now remove this layer and add an anisotropic layer here. Now, as I said, anisotropic is very specific for recreating, as I said, brushed and scratchy sort of surfaces. The options up there is quite similar. You can see you got attenuation, you got the roughness, you got this reflection strength, specular strength, and bump strength, which is quite similar. Layer color, layer mask, and layer Fresnel, and layer sampling, and the only thing that is different is this layer anisotropy. Now, just note that in order to get the anisotropy, you need to have a roughness more than 0%, and this is very important, and the layer, when you create it, comes with 50% of roughness, so remember that. Now, I'm not gonna go ahead all of these options. There's a lot, especially when you add different stuff. It will get more obvious. Now, you got this layer anisotropy, you got this anisotropy percent, orientation, and this different pattern, mirror, scratches, and reprojection. If you go and add this anisotropy and increase it, you immediately see these sort of scratches in your pattern. You got this orientation, which basically gives you the ability to change the orientation of these scratches, so it's very simple. Now, you have different methods. For example, down here you got different method of scratches. If I go from, for example, to this primary, you can very simply see, let me just make this, if you even go to 0, you can see now this anisotropy value basically controls the reprojection. If I go, for example, to non-planar, you get another set of options. So, but just let's go ahead and talk about, for example, we got this primary. Now, if you down here, you can see, for example, your as you can see, the more you add this value, you are going to get a much more strong anisotropy effect. You got the scale. Basically, if you make it smaller, you can very quickly see the effect on your scratch. You got the orientation that could be controlled. I think. Okay. Now you got the these mirror values. I know there's a lot of options that are really simple. You can add them and see how they actually work. Like, for example, add this box, and you can add a bit more anisotropy here, and you can very quickly see, now it's sphere, but you can see this sort of squirt pattern in the sphere, and basically this is what anisotropy is, and you can simply go ahead and recreate very nice stuff. For example, if I go to this circular pattern there, you can see how it works. So this is basically the anisotropy. And another thing that we have here is this Irvan. Let's go ahead and actually remove this layer here and just give you a really brief introduction to this Irvan, moving close. So if I go ahead and add this, you can very quickly see. Now let's actually change this preview, even though, okay, there we go. Now, as you can see, it gives you a really nice fabric pattern here. And if you go to the options up there are quite similar, so no worries. But down here you get a lot of different options that you really have to go there and work with them. You got different presets, and you can see, for example, change it, and they are extremely realistic and nice. So you have the ability to go ahead and actually change the colors based on the pattern and preset. You can see you get different pattern and different presets. You get different quality control, scale control, this color controls. And as you can see, there's a lot of options that you really can go ahead and simply increase and decrease these values and sliders and see how they affect your materials. Unfortunately, it's going to get forever if we go through all of these options, but it's a very brief introduction. So this is what the woven cloth basically is, and I'm waiting for this layer to be updated. Unfortunately, actually, it's very huge. Okay, there we go. As you can see, it's very nice and realistic, and when you render it on different clothes, it's really great. So you got different options, so you can basically control a lot of stuff in your pattern. So this is it. Now I hope it was enough, talking about different options. Now we're going to be actually taking a look at creating some materials. So I know you know the options, but I think you're sort of confused right now. But I'm going to give you a basic introduction, and I'm going to create some materials, and hopefully it's going to be very useful for you. So see you in the second part of this tutorial. I'm just going to go ahead and drink something, and I'll be back. Okay, so welcome back. Now let's go ahead and start creating some materials. The first material is those shiny spheres that we are used to creating inside Cinema 4D, and believe me or not, but in most motion graphic projects, that's what you need, and you're not gonna have to go through and dig all of those layers to create something simple. And it would be great if actually they used just that reflection channel, very simple reflection channel, for if we wanted just to create some quick materials, even though we can create this quickly. So let's go ahead and create something quite similar. I'm going to again use this white color, go to your reflection or reflectance channel. I'm still not used to its name, so let me go ahead and remove the specular. Now you simply go ahead and add a reflection layer here. There we go. And down here you can, if you want to have a color for a reflection, so you can basically define it here. And then you can come down here to your layer Fresnel, and let's just have a quick preview there. And you can go ahead and change it to, for example, conductor if you want, and simply go ahead and change the amount of your absorption, and there we go. We have something quite similar to what we used to. Maybe we can add a 2-3-5% of roughness, and let's go ahead and render it and see what we are gonna get. I'm gonna pause the video while I render. So okay, so there we go. We have our nice reflective basically spheres. Now if you want to, you can actually not use this Fresnel here and come here in your layer mask and use our old Fresnel channel here, and it might be a bit maybe easier for you guys, but as you can see, it really helps to sort of sell the effect there. There we go. Now you're going to get something quite similar, and if we render it, you can see. Okay, there we go. Now that's it. Let's go ahead and talk about more complex materials. I'm going to just go ahead and actually come here and clear this thing out here and just use a simple Fresnel layer. Okay, you can actually use this dielectric because it's going to be adding this sort of glossy surface, and it's going to be quite nice. So let's actually go ahead and render this thing and see how that's going to look. Okay, so this is what you're going to get with just dielectric here. I'm going to go ahead and actually turn off this Fresnel here, or let's go to conductor there. Okay, now let's go ahead and create another material. Now another sort of material that is really, this system is powerful, is layer based complex materials that you can basically replicate scar paints and really complex textures. So for example, if we want to go ahead and do something like a car paint, I'm going to just use a reflection here. In your base layer, you need a lot of blurriness, so let's go something like maybe 35, 30, something like this. The color, I'm gonna I have this quick storage there. Let's go ahead and use this color maybe. And you go ahead and just kind of reduce your reflection strength a bit. And you can use a bump if you want. Go change this to a custom bump map. And but I'm just trying to recreate sort of car paint material here, so we basically don't need it, even though it would be not too harmful if we actually add a noise here and reduce the global scale of it to something maybe like 1% here. And there we go. It's gonna help. This is your base coat basically. Now you need to add another layer. In the second layer we can go ahead and we are gonna be having, and let's see, not that blurry. Let's go ahead, reduce the amount of reflection too. And in your layer Fresnel we are going to change this to dialectic. Okay, so this is the overall color that you have here, and you can go ahead and add another layer, and this could be used as your clear coat. So you need, for example, 1, 2, 3% of blurriness. Change your layer Fresnel again to dialectic, and you can actually come here and between different methods that you have, for example, you can come here and change your layer Fresnel to conductor, okay, and change the preset here, something like iron, and it would be trying to actually replicate that effect there. Now if I go to layer second, layer Fresnel, let's go to sort of a let's see what I'm going to use. I don't think it's really that glossy, but the third layer could be, we can use gloss there. And now if I go ahead and add this layer, we're gonna get a really sort of fresh car paint material. If I just go ahead and render the thing, you see the result there. So I really try to render the thing, but one of the very downside of this new reflectance system is if you use global illumination in conjunction with this and when you add a lot of layers here, it's gonna get you really a hard time rendering. It's gonna increase rendering very basically, I don't know how to say, it's just really for a motion graphic designer, we have to keep our renders really short. You know, one of the really principles of render, for example, when sometimes you need to render 500 frames in one day, so what are you gonna do? So I think one of the downside of this system is really you can say if you take a look at this here, it's 2 minutes and 51 seconds, and it hasn't calculated the irradiance cache yet. So it's really a downside of this material system is that if you add these layers and you have global illumination turned on, oh my god, it's impossible to render. It's gonna really increase the render time, and I don't think this is something quite wanted for us motion graphic designers. So this is one of the really negative points, and hopefully they do something about it, because for example in V-Ray we can create very complex materials, and the render time is still much more better than what I have seen. Please correct me if you think I'm not right, if you have better experience. Maybe my machine is getting old, but I think it's still quite a decent machine that I have here. And as I said, V-Ray we create very complex materials, and everything is much more quicker. So I'm going to go ahead and actually turn off global illumination and render the scene and see what we're going to get. There we go, the render is finished, and as you can see we have this really gorgeous material. The render time wasn't that bad, about 48 seconds without any sort of global illumination. As you can see, the material is very gorgeous, and it was impossible to create something like this in previous versions of Cinema 4D. So let's go ahead and create. Now this surface is really you know, fresh and without any scratches. So if we wanted to add more scratches, let's go ahead and control drag and try to add a bit more scratches here. Now how you actually add those scratches, it's absolutely up to you. you can add grayscale values to your reflection strengths and to your roughness, and also you can add those maps in your bump map, and it will give you sort of a unique sort of reflections and a unique sort of height, even though it would be very small, but it's going to be very, very impressive. And for example, let's go ahead and add some stuff. I'm gonna go here in this bump strengths of our second layer. I'm gonna go here, change this to a custom bump map, and I'm gonna use a layer shader here. Go to a layer shader. I'm gonna add a shader, and let's see, actually add an image there. I have some dirt textures. I'm not sure where I've got this stuff. I've had it for a few years, but let's actually use this one. Not too bad. And I'm gonna go ahead and add noise on top of it, and I'm gonna change the noise type to, what is this one? Not too bad. And let's go ahead and change this to screen blending mode there. And if you go ahead and open your material there, you can see how those scratches could be seen there. And if you go here and add a bit more strength to your bump map, you will simply be able to create really nice unique surfaces there. And for this one, let's go ahead and do something similar. I'm gonna go ahead and use noise only this time, and let's go ahead and maybe use this thing here with bits more maybe contrast, and it will definitely help there. Actually, let's see how this is going to work out for us. And sorry, I made this mistake here. There we go. Now you can see it much more obvious. There we go. I'm going to clear this out there. And here we go. Now this one is a bit of a clear coat, so let's go ahead and keep our strengths low there. And now you have these really nice scratches, and you can still add your bump maps here if you want. It's still up to you, and you can totally do that. For example, one of the really basic concepts of material world in real world is that there is no perfection in any surfaces. Every surface has its own imperfections, and in order to replicate those imperfections, we can use a large noise map down here. And go ahead, I'm gonna just go to my editor and change this to bump here, so we can see the bump map, hopefully. Okay, why I can't see this bump map in the viewport? Please someone tells me. I have no idea. Anyways, we'll go to this bump map here, and I'm gonna go inside it, add a lot of global scale. Let's go to something like 600 there, and this will help you to actually replicate those imperfections, but really slightly. Something like maybe 2 or 3% would be more than enough. Now if you go ahead, and actually I'm gonna go ahead and render it maybe in a bit more close-up shot here. Okay, and see what we're gonna get this time. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and render the thing, and when the render is finished, I'll be back. Okay, there we go. As you can see, the render is finished, and we have such amazing surface. Look at those details on the surface, and it's really quite realistic, and we can create whatever we want, literally, and it's really great. The only downside, as I said, is the render time. When you don't use global illumination, it's actually quite great. We got, for example, 2 minutes and 54 seconds for these complex spheres. As you can see, there's a lot of them here. But if we had global illumination turned on, oh my god, I think it would be at least something like 7-10 minutes. It takes a long time to actually calculate different GI passes there. Now let's go ahead and create some metals. For example, what if you want to create something like a chrome? Create a new material, go ahead, go to reflection, add again, delete these default speech here, add a reflection layer here, and there we go. You got the chrome. Go to your Fresnel here and change this to conductor. As we said, this is more suited to metals and opaque surfaces. And now you got all of these metals that you can select, you can, for example, this chromium here, and if you turn off your color here, you can see you have a very nice chrome, but as I said, for more realistic stuff you can add your noise or whatever, you know, whatever that makes your surface looks imperfect, whether adding a noise map in your bump map or adding a noise map in your bump strength here for your layer. For example, this is it. If you want to create something like a more blurry reflection, here you got just add some here. Let's see, there we go. Here's your blur reflection, and that is quite great. And if you want to have a surface which is basically a combination of blurry and sharp reflections, you simply you can have two layers separately, or you can simply, for example, come here and use a texture here. Let's see, again, I'm gonna, for example, use this texture here and just make reflection a bit more, and come down here. I'm just going to add a bit more contrast to my image there. That's too much. There we go. And you can see you get this very gorgeous surface here. And if you want to have a colored, if you want to have this colored, you can simply go ahead and add your color here, which actually could be used instead of your color channel in a lot of cases, because as you can see, this is very nice by itself. Or you can come on here and add your color here, whatever it is, and there we go, you get this nice imperfect surface, because as I said, we use a Fresnel here, and the Fresnel basically is a sort of layer mask, a sort of alpha, but with its unique functionality, which makes the direct surfaces, the surfaces are more directed toward the camera, more less reflective, and the edges more reflective, and you can invert this functionality by this option here. So this is this thing here, so actually let's leave it there. Let's for example, if you want to create something like gold, what are we gonna do? I'm gonna just control drag here and create a gold. So the first thing is you have these gorgeous presets, you can use them. So there we go, you have gold. No, you don't have gold actually, but this preset really helps you to give the reflections and the color in a you know, appropriate basically way, and you still have a lot, not a lot, but you have a few things to basically change. And in this stage you really need to have basic familiarity with the way the material works in 3D world. For example, you need to have a diffuse channel in materials like gold, and this diffuse channel could be defined by looking at a real gold and its darkest point. And for gold, that diffuse channel in most cases is something quite close between, you know, yellow and green, a very dark color, maybe something like that, a bit more maybe toward greens. And this could be a nice diffuse point for your gold. And in your reflection, as we know, the gold has basically a color reflection, so we go to your color and we choose this sort of red. Maybe it's still should be a bit more yellow. There we go. Now you have this nice gold, and if you come here, add a bit more roughness there. Okay, and let's go ahead and add our bump. This time we're going to be using just a simple noise, again with a lot of strings here, and something like maybe 3%. And there we go, you have got yourself gold. Let's just go ahead and render this thing quickly, and I'm going to apply these golds there, and let's go ahead and render it. There you go, you got some gorgeous gold. We still can work on it. Now let's create sort of those foils that are made out of gold. Let's go ahead and try to if we can recreate those there. Now for something like this, you simply go ahead, but the first thing is you need more roughness. So let's go and add a lot of roughness here. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and actually, let's see, and add a bit more roughness there and reduce the specular strength a bit. And for the bump, I'm gonna clear the thing for the moment, and I'm gonna again use the layer shader to add a bit more complex surface here. I'm gonna use the image that actually we have been using it a lot here. It's a gorgeous dirt map. So let's go ahead and add some noise on top of it, and again let's go ahead and choose a nice noise type here. If we can find something cool. What is this thing? Maybe this is not too bad actually. Let's go ahead and make this to be screen and just reduce its, and again I'm gonna add a bit more contrast here, and let me open it in this window so we can see what's going on here. I'm gonna go up and really add the strengths here, so hopefully we can see it in a better way. There we go. Much more nicer. Okay, I think the reflection could be a bit more rough, and let me go ahead, actually I'm gonna change the noise type here. I'm gonna use this one. It's much more suited. Let's see, global scale, let's go to something like 200% or maybe 300% there. And I'm going to reduce the overall amount of reflection here a bit. Okay. And okay, I still actually need to see. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, so let's go ahead and render the thing and see what we're gonna get and if it needs any sort of changes there. So I'm gonna go ahead and render the thing. Okay, as you can see, we are way too much wrong. Let's go ahead and see what we can do. First of all, let's go ahead, our reflection strengths. I'm gonna reduce the amount of bump here. Actually, I created a very, let's see what we can do here. I'm gonna make the thing a bit more less there. We're gonna set to gold, and can actually add another layer there. Let me go to my bump. Let me actually delete this noise, generally speaking, and see what we're gonna get. Let's see if there is any better shader down this thing. I think these are more specific to actually this sort of stuff. Let me add this thing and see what we're gonna get there. There we go. These are quite nice. Let me 0, 1, and see what we're gonna get. Okay, much more better. Now let's see what we're gonna get this time. There we go. As you can see, much more better, and if we had global illumination it would look much more better. Let me just go ahead and do some final tweaks. I'm gonna change the amount of generally speaking, add a bit more here, and we can actually add a noise there. Again, let's change this noise to maybe this Luca isn't too bad, and let's open the window. I'm just trying to tweak stuff so to get there hopefully, and let's go ahead and change the strength of this layer, maybe change it to screen there, and okay, so let's go ahead and give it a final render. So as you can see, we have this absolutely gorgeous gold materials here. And now the other thing that you might think about creating is sort of a glass looking materials. Now let's go ahead and create a quick glass there. Now the first thing is your transparency. As soon as you add your transparency, if you go back to your Reflectance channel, you can see there is this transparency tab that basically controls some of the parameters of your transparency here. For example, the roughness, the reflection strength, and stuff like that. So let me go ahead and maybe remove this default specular there. We can add it later on if we really wanted to. Now go to your transparency. Let's go to something like maybe 98, 97. Add your index of refraction based on the type of gloss that you're using. In the reflectance, you can go ahead and add whatever sort of reflection that you want. What we added GGX here, and this is the effect of that GGX. As you can see, it makes it much more nicer and better there. And there we go, you have a simple glass. And if you go ahead and change the color here, you can see you can basically tint it, and the same rules still apply. You got this absorption color, which is the way to basically have some glossed look there. And as you can see, very simply, you can control that, how much this absorption color basically tint your color. Or you can come here and as you can see, change your the color of your reflection and simply have different type of glosses for yourself. You can come here and add blurriness if you want to. So as you can see, simply make your glass more more blurry. And you can come here and have as you can see, you can actually control the roughness of your glass also here. And but you can see it's not exactly all the blurriness, because the main blurriness is being controlled here, but you can still have control over those options also here. So you can add the reflection strengths if you want to change all the parameters. So if you want to, for example, just change your reflection strengths, and you get this nice gloss that you can actually go ahead and render it and see the result based on this. So okay, I hope you loved this tutorial. We covered a lot of stuff, and if you have any question, please send me a message or drop a comment or whatever. And hopefully you loved it. Stay tuned for more C40 R16 specific tutorials. And I'll also, another big announcement that I almost forgot to make here is that we're actually about to launch a C40 website, which will be specific to Cinema 4D and motion graphic stuff, 3D motion graphic, 2D motion graphic, possibly After Effects too. And we're still trying to think whether a website like this is really needed or not. And hopefully if we think it's really a good idea to have a website with a new idea for Cinema 4D, we'll be launching it hopefully in a 2-week to 4-week, so hopefully, and if you have any name suggestion, I really appreciate if you love this tutorial. One of the things that make me feel good, just send me a private message for the name. And for example, say I think the name of this would be a great idea for a Cinema 4D website. It doesn't have to have Cinema 4D in its name. For example, it could be anything related to motion graphic or motion or graphic or design, motion design, whatever. And hopefully I will really appreciate if you send me your ideas about a name like this. And if a name catch my eyes, I would definitely give back the guy who sent me that name in a really good way. So thank you for watching this tutorial again. I hope you loved it, and I see you in the next tutorials.